Storytelling is fascinating in how it allows you to both establish believable worlds that seem to exist completely independent of their own, while simultaneously having themes and ideas that can inform the audience of the writer's view of our world. A story about a little hobbit in a vast, fantastical universe with wizards and elves also breathes themes and ideas that are timeless and pretty much relevant to anyone. Some stories encompass general ideas with no real direct problem in the real world that it wants to talk about. Others have pinpoint reasons to exist that are meant to bring to light a very specific point of contention. Like most things, this exists within degrees and ranges, and today I'm going to be talking about how I feel a story can be elevated or lowered by how it conveys those themes, and what the point of the narrative actually is. Something that's inherently linked with your messages is, who is your audience? Who is the story intended for? A story designed to be read by children would probably not be received well if the moral was, say, do your taxes. I don't know if you're aware, but children don't file taxes. Knowing your audience should also inform how applicable the point of your story will be. Who you are writing to and what you want to say to them is something a writer needs to address. If I'm writing, say, to young boys, I might want to tell them that they should cherish the people around them, that friends and family are important. Now, this is a very general idea, but I think most people would agree with it. That may be why so many people write about that kind of thing, because it's very agreeable. More specific ideas might not be as agreeable or may be harder to convey. Now, obviously, this all boils down to interpretation. Two people can watch the same movie and come out with completely different outcomes. This is both a good and a bad thing. A movie that is designed to be provocative and up to interpretation is doing its job right if people come out with different outcomes. But a movie that is supposed to have a clear, concise message is not doing its job if that message isn't understandable. Within reason, of course. I think anybody that comes out of a movie like Jumanji thinking about how it was about board games are evil is probably not using their brain. I'll show you an example by dunking on one of your favorite childhood classics. The Lion King. I can already hear you typing in the comments. Hold your horses. At least let me explain. First, let's actually identify what the primary moral of Lion King is. Take it away, Monkey Man.
Ow! Jeez, what was that for?
It doesn't matter. It's in the past.
Yeah, but it still hurts.
Oh, yes, the past can hurt. But the way I see it, you can either run from it or learn from it. Ah!
To be as clear as possible, I think this is the movie telling us that the moral of the movie is you need to get over your past mistakes and try to move forward, even if it might be painful, or something along those lines. If you don't think that this is the main point, then allow me to change your mind. I've had a lot of people argue that the moral of this movie is dealing with your problems in general. I disagree, and I'll be using examples from the film to make my case. The reason I'm laboriously going through this to establish the moral is because it will tie back into my number one problem with the film, which is what I actually want to discuss, but it will only actually be a problem if we agree on what the moral is. So in case you need to refresh your memory, Simba leaves Pride Rock specifically because he thinks Mufasa's death is his fault. Meanwhile, Scar has taken over and is making life miserable for everyone. Simba won't go back and stop him because he feels guilty about killing his dad. As I'm sure many of you are aware, Lion King is heavily inspired by Hamlet. It's obviously not a one-to-one comparison because most of the cast lives to see the end of The Lion King, but they are extremely similar. One of the ways in which they differ, however, is character motivation. Hamlet is a play about being torn between the choice of Hamlet wanting to kill his uncle and not doing that because a ghost told him. In The Lion King, Simba is motivated by guilt over what he thinks is killing his father. This change is one that has a ripple effect all throughout the core of The Lion King. I ask you now, why not keep the motivations the same? If you wanted to tell a story about somebody who's not dealing with their problems properly, why make this change? The template is there for a story about dealing with one's problems as a general theme. Disney clearly didn't care about originality, otherwise why would they have stolen from Kimba? Which, if you're not aware, is a separate animation which Disney plagiarized the fuck out of. So why make this change? Why have this central theming of guilt and mistakes? There's no reason for it unless that's going to be core to the central themes of the movie. I think to ignore Rafiki's specific wording here is to overlook the point they're getting at. I don't think the wording chosen would be so careless when expressing the entire moral of your story. The Lion King essentially follows the same beats as a redemption story. Well, yes, Simba never directly does anything morally wrong. he thinks he has throughout the entire movie. The core conflict of the movie is his guilt. Regardless of if he did or did not, he thinks he did. Coming back to admit what he did, or what he thinks he did, is the crux of the entire movie for a reason. This wasn't a choice made on a whim. Whenever I talk to people about this who argue in Lion King's defense, they never account for this whole theming of guilt or past mistakes. All I ever get is, oh, that's just the way they wanted to tell the story. That is a horrendous way of looking at it. Writers don't make all these choices for no reason. You don't set up your entire narrative around one central conflict, that being Simba's guilt, and then not have that conflict tie back into the main moral of the story. You can analyze this from the way they talk about things, too. When Simba talks about, oh, I can't go back, he's not talking about, oh, I can't confront Scar, I can't go back because I left in the first place. He's talking about, I can't go back because I killed my fucking dad. That is the crux of everything. Even from viewing it from the lens of, oh, it's about dealing with their problems in general, the problem that they're building up is Simba having to deal with the aftermath of telling his mom that he killed his dad. That is what the movie is building up to. Well, yes, conflict with Scar is implied because he's the villain of the film, so obviously there needs to be some sort of confrontation with him. That's not really what any of our characters talk about. We get some vague speech about, oh, Simba, we need to do something. But that is extremely vague. It could mean 10 billion different things. Meanwhile, we know for a fact why he won't go back. Again, this is all focused on. All of this shit is being focused in on and built up. For 90 minutes, this is what the movie is about. Yes, I fucking timed this shit. From the time that it takes Simba to know that his dad is dead to the time point of the movie end when he's actually fully, completely dealt with the problem, it's been about 90 minutes. And just to fully account for everything, the reason we see Scar kill Mufasa is just so the children, the primary audience of this film, don't see gray morality. This isn't really a thing that's addressed in most Disney movies. Whenever a protagonist does something wrong in a Disney film, they're usually just misguided. And usually all the bad things are happening because a bad guy did it, because bad people bad. So now that we've established what the writer wants to say, we can actually go into my problem with this movie. The Lion King builds up an emotional conflict. Simba goes through an emotional arc of realizing that he can find the strength to confront his past mistakes and be a better, stronger person. That is what the movie is building up for an hour. Unfortunately, what we actually get is Simba having a physical conflict, and the emotional conflict blows up in his face until Scar misplaces his hand and basically takes away any burden of guilt Simba has to bear. To break this down even further, let's flash back to a central question that has been asked of two very important characters at very important scenes in the film.
What will your mother think?
And your mother? What will she think?
The writers thought this was good enough to bring up twice. The problem is, we never get this question answered. We never have a conversation with Simba talking to his mom about how she feels, about how he can move on from this. Instead, we get shocked looks and him being literally backed into a corner with nobody even doing anything. We get Nala yelling out to him, and fucking nothing else. It single-handedly negates any need for Simba to actually grow as a person. He doesn't have to live with his mistakes and be a better person. He just needs to show up, kill a guy, and everything's hunky-dory. Simba doesn't actually change because of this. He finds the strength to come back, but he doesn't really overcome his past mistakes. He almost does.
That's not gonna work, Scar. I've put it behind me.
But what about your faithful subjects? Have they put it behind them?
So what ends up happening is the same issue that we just spent like an hour building up of Simba trying to get over still hangs him up, because then later, this is what causes him to get fucked over. This is what causes him to get backed into a corner. The same issue. It doesn't even really make sense. He says that he's overcome the problem and put it behind him, and then Scar just brings up, oh yeah, by the way, people will judge you. And Simba just kind of loses. If you can still be emotionally devastated and cornered because of something, newsflash, you're not actually over it. And I understand him being sad over his dad's death. Who wouldn't be? But to be over something means that you can do the things that you need to do, your responsibilities and whatever things you need to do in life. You can do those things without getting tripped up. That this one thing isn't going to be an anchor on you that prevents you from doing them. And that's not the case with Simba. Therefore, he's not over it. The core of the problem I have is that beating Scar doesn't actually emotionally resonate with the themes of the movie. There is no time dedicated to the act of physically beating Scar as a problem. It's treated more as like an obvious logical assumption. In fact, it's literally stated that Scar is physically weak.
I wouldn't dream of challenging you.
Pity. Why not?
Well, as far as brains go, I got the lion's share, but when it comes to brute strength, I'm afraid I'm at the shallow end of the gene pool.
This massive disconnect with the message and buildup is really disappointing to me. Simba shouldn't succeed because somebody told him the problem he's been having all this time was completely manufactured by another evil person. Simba should win because he found the strength to do so on his own with no external factors. You could have the same climax, only instead of Simba getting a free pass, have Nala and his mom bail him out and have a conversation that goes like, he may have made a mistake, but he's here now and he's going to be a great king, etc., etc. I understand that realistically, if your son came back from the grave and told you that he killed his dad, you'd need time to properly digest how you feel. But realism is an acceptable sacrifice when in service of the ideas and themes of your story. Realistically, lions can't talk. Realistically, Simba would have eaten Timon and Pumbaa. Realistically, this scene is a massive wart on the movie. I have other problems with this movie. Timon and Pumbaa are fucking terrible, and I can't believe people actually like those characters. But, I mean, that pales in comparison to this one scene, honestly. This scene is such a massive disservice to the entire movie, and I can't believe people defend it. It's actually insane to me. Originally, I was just going to talk about other movies and other films a lot more and use just The Lion King as one example. But after one too many arguments about Lion King, it kind of just evolved into me wanting to dunk on this movie because people unironically defend that scene, and I have no idea how they can justify that shit. But that'll be it for me. If you like Lion King, go for it. It's not my favorite, but I mean, I've seen worse. Fucking Rise of Skywalker was way, way worse. Holy shit. That's a whole video all on its own. Brush your teeth, stay in school, don't do drugs. Love you, bye.